Salutations to the Fire Emblem community, this is Don1 and Mekkah.
Hi.
And you're watching Chapter 8X, my Fire Emblem 5 Paragon Mode 0% Girls playthrough. I gotta take a deep breath here, because this is one of the most infamous maps in Fire Emblem 5. Anyone who has played this game will remember this map, not only because it's a Fog of War map, like pretty much every other Gaiden chapter in this game, not only because this map design is pretty unique, there's full of one-tile wide corridors that we have to brawl our way through. Not only because this is a map in which you get Dagdar and Tanya back, and Dagdar's amazing, but because at the end of all of this, there is the boss to end all bosses, the legendary Gomez.
I mostly remember this map because the beginning is really awkward. Dagdar and Tanya start right south of a bunch of really angry, really powerful brigands that could get rid of Tanya if you position them wrong, which is exactly what I did in my first playthrough. So pay close attention if you still have to play this chapter, because the way we do it is probably the most reliable. There's no guaranteed way, but this comes pretty close. So Dagdar has that brave axe that we left on him back in chapter 3, and that makes getting rid of these brigands in one enemy phase pretty easy, which is nice because that means they won't be around to harass Tanya anymore. The brave axe will always hit twice, of course, and Dagdar also naturally doubles most of these brigands. He also has the charge skill, which will initiate another round of combat if his HP and his attack speed are higher than the enemies, so that gives him a lot of chances to hit even if he does miss somewhere along the way. His durability is also pretty amazing. He has 43 HP and 10 defense, so he can take like 4 or 5 hits without dying. So we want him to one-round all these guys so we can advance him further north and not have to worry about any stragglers.
The first turn of this chapter is like a giant fuck you to all of the scrubs who decide resolutely to never use their pre-promos because they suck up all of the experience and instead only train up their unpromoted units. Because regardless of how much training you gave to Tanya in the first 4 chapters of the game, if you were to try to use her to any combat capacity in this chapter, you're not going to have a good time. Because essentially what happens is you throw in a defenseless young girl into a mob of violent, mean men, and you can kind of imagine what happens. Now, what she does contribute in terms of reliability is she gives a support bonus to Dagdar, which adds 10 to his hit rate and avoid. So that actually makes everything actually more than just a bit more reliable, substantially more reliable.
So for the rest of our units, they have to squeeze through these one-tile wide corridors, and we can pick between 2 of them, but they are pretty much the same, and there is no real reason to go right here, so we just go left with all of our units. Generally, when Fire Emblem chapters give you the option of splitting up your team to go in 2 different directions, you should pretty much not do so, especially when there is no treasure or anything to be gotten on either way. In this case, we go left with our units and we put them behind Orsin and Asvel because they have the best 2 range. You can imagine that if we put like Shiva or Fergus with their 1 range swords in front, that we would be disappointed when they give like no enemy phase output. Orsin and Asvel are pretty reliable for the most part, but Asvel has some issues. He has to pick between fire or thunder, and fire is like not powerful enough to one-round enemies without a pure water boost, and thunder is, but thunder can miss. You saw that happen on turn 1 enemy phase, but thankfully he compensated by triggering Adept and saved on the reset.
So while Asvel and Orsin are responsible for the combat tasks in this chapter, we also brought along Lifis and Ronin, more for their mobility than for any combat ability because they are pretty bad at fighting. Much like in chapter 3, we are using them for their extended infantry movement. They both have 7 movement, and on top of that they can also rescue Asvel and Leaf so they can scoot them forward just a tiny bit to help save a turn. Now, Dagdar decided he was so bloodthirsty that he didn't get enough combat on the first enemy phase and moved below an enemy thief who had generously unlocked the door for us to the throne room, and he's going to get even more kills on the second enemy phase. There are 3 stationary steel axe brigands in the throne room that he's going to end up killing, and then there's also a bunch of hunters and hand axe brigands that kind of mill about randomly, and we're also positioning him in a perfect way to end up killing some of the hand axe brigands.
The reason we can position Dagdar so nicely is because that thief is a total pro. This guy helps us in many more ways. Besides occupying that 2-range spot that would otherwise endanger Dagdar, he also unlocks the door so we can access the throne room without having to get Lifis or a door key over there. And also, He doesn't really behave like most thieves do. We've talked about Thracia's strange AI before, and this is just another example of it. There is a chest in the upper left room where the thief is walking towards that contains a leg ring, this game's equivalent of the boots, and if I were a thief, I would really love to take a leg ring and be able to raid and run much faster. But this thief decides, nah, I'm just gonna open the door and I'm gonna walk away through that staircase because I'm done in this chapter over here.
You know, my hypothesis is that that thief has some social anxiety disorder because he feels a bit uncomfortable hanging around all these big burly brigands, and that's why he wants to leave the map as fast as he can. Now, it is true that in that top left-hand room where the leg ring chest is, there is another group of enemy brigands and hunters lying in wait guarding that chest. One thing you can count on in this map is that no matter where you go, you will find more brigands or hunters, and I think this map has one of the highest enemy densities in the game, and it's also one of the most enemy phase focused, if you can tell, because we've been taking quite a while in this chapter, even though it's not that long.
This map is a great showcase of why Dagdar is so good, because he's getting almost every kill. The reason Dagdar can keep going for so long is, for one, because Saphy can heal him at range with Physic, but also because if he does get very low, then he can just use a vulnerary to get back up to full. Thankfully, vulneraries work like elixirs, as we mentioned before, and not like the Fire Emblem Game Boy Advance vulneraries, where they only heal 10 HP. You can imagine that would make it a lot harder. For this enemy phase, Dagdar did something strange and he equipped an iron bow, even though he was going to get attacked at 1 range. The reason for this is that iron bow is a lot more reliable at killing the 2-range enemies, and those are the ones that we really want to get rid of, because there's only 2 enemies that will attack him at 1 range. The iron bow has both more hit and more might than the hand axe, so that makes killing a lot easier. If he does miss, he can always fall back on charge, which thanks to his massive HP and his slight speed advantage will always trigger.
So now that Dagdar has just about cleared out most of the rabble and he almost has a direct line of sight with the enemy warrior boss sitting on top of the throne, we can talk about Gomez. If you've played this game, you understand how bad he is. If you haven't, let me take this opportunity to explain to you how bad he is. This is Chapter 8X, only Chapter 8X, so pretty early in the game, and we're facing a boss with 46 HP, 12 defense boosted by 10 from the throne, so that's 22 defense, and 14 speed. He doubles most of our units, including Dagdar, and he cannot be doubled by someone such as Asvel, even if Asvel were to have max speed, because he doesn't get any attack speed mitigation from his constitution in this game. On top of that, he's also really dodgy because of the throne, and his only weakness is having 3 magic, so we're supposed to basically attack him with our magic using units, but our only good magic using unit is Asvel.
Yeah, even Orsin in his newly promoted state will not be able to take on the amazing Gomez. Like, Orsin's stats, they look kind of impressive, but Wrath only works on enemy phase. He has no reliable way to crit him on player phase, so he isn't a solution either. I guess I'm forced to come to the conclusion that you only use bad units, because I know Fergus would have just cut through him.
Wow, Mekkah, I know that you're like the biggest Fergus fanboy on the face of the earth, and you hate Orsin, but that was some salty shit there. The reason why I promoted Orsin is for the upcoming enemy phase. As we said earlier, there are some enemies waiting across that wall in the room with the leg ring chest, and Asvel took care of 2 of them on the previous enemy phase, but Orsin still has to mop them up, and the remaining guys have steel bows, so they hit kinda hard. So we promoted Orsin for the extra void and the extra defense to improve survivability. Additionally, he gains extra 4 damage when he criticals with the Puji after he promotes. So, because his accuracy isn't perfect, we prefer him to try to one-hit KO these enemies outright so that he doesn't miss due to Thracia's hit system and ruin a run.
So in order for Saphy to promote in time, we not only need her to spam Physic every turn, but we also need her to see some enemy phase action here. We manipulate the hunter into attacking her by only giving him other targets that have 2 range, so he's forced to attack her if he doesn't want to get countered. She gets like an entire level off of this because she has Paragon and it's Paragon mode, and the formula for EXP for her is also pretty generous.
The experience formula in this game for units gaining experience after completing non-lethal round of combat is the quantity 31 minus the unit's level and quantity divided by the unit's class power. So in Saphy's case, because she is a priest or a sister, her class power is 1, and because she's level 8, she would normally gain 31 minus 8 equals 23 experience. You multiply that by 4 for Paragon mode and Paragon skill, and that equals 92, which is almost an entire level. So the rest of this chapter has built up to this point, decisive showdown with Gomez, and it's going to be a bit lame because Asvel is going to one-hit KO him with a critical hit. That is good, but it doesn't really showcase the amount of complexity that went into maximizing the reliability of this boss skill strategy, because if Asvel were to not get a critical hit, we have a backup plan in place. Part of the reason why we use Ronin in this chapter is so that Ronin can pick up Asvel on this turn and rescue drop him out of range of Gomez so that he doesn't get one-shot by a steel bow. And then Asvel gets a second chance to try to critical hit Gomez. Now, if Asvel hit Gomez twice but didn't get critical hits, which is very likely, then Gomez would be on low enough HP such that Dagdar can walk up to him and try to finish him off with 1 out of 2 Brave Axe hits. At really low hit, it's like 30 something hit, but he has Tanya support and he has 2 chances, so it's still worth trying.
Lifis unnecessarily used the torch last turn, at least it seemed that way, but it will become apparent why he did that this turn. This is because you cannot get chests in Fog of War if you cannot see them, and he is going to get the Wrath manual from a chest this turn. Wrath is a very important skill. You've seen how good it is on Orsin, because if he didn't have Wrath, he would be total shit, unlike Fergus, who is amazing with no skills at all. Tanya is also going to get some treasure, the leg ring that we've mentioned before. We do have some treasure that we leave behind this chapter, because there's no time to get it. This includes a Holy Water, the Devil Axe, a Hammer, and the Near Scroll. They're nice, but we don't have time to get them.
Alright, and that concludes this chapter 8X, completed in 6 turns. We'll see you next time.
See ya.